So we were to read 3 and 4, chapters 3 and 4 in James. Now Luann said she was coming with Joanne today, so I don't know. I guess we'll just hold on, but
Could be she's just a translate.
yeah. Oh yes, no, that's late.
I don't know what route she takes from Forest Lake, but I guess it's...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's, you never know what
I thought it would be good timing for Marlissa's funeral if that road would be open tomorrow. It's supposed to be.
What's open today?
Is it open?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, great.
Well,
they haven't taken...
It's nothing on this side, but I mean...
No, they haven't taken the sign down.
No, they have taken the sign. The sign was, the more closed sign was behind the barrier as I came.
But I think they've got the driveway blocked off.
No.
Don't they?
Well, I don't...
They have Hazelwood blocked.
Yeah.
You can't get through.
Yeah.
There's about 5 barriers.
Yeah.
Right, no,
Okay, well,
no,
I came
yeah.
from the, east.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
and they've
no-
been
no
kind of
problem.
using that, but they
And it
won't
was-
let you go too far.
And it was graded right up to the, parking lot, so no bumps.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Well, they had generators running last night when we left.
Yes,
So
they
I thought
did.
I don't know what they were doing, but,
I don't know, but there were flashing lights when we were having our board meeting up there. You could see them out there, so.
yeah.
They were doing something
We're at the tail end, it sounds like.
all the time.
Yeah, it has been a long time. I think
Yeah.
I hadn't been here too long, and I came in May when they closed that.
Exactly. It's
So-
been the whole summer.
Yeah. Well, any comments or questions about what we talked about, last week in terms of James? What we really get into in these chapters are kind of the nitty-gritty of the wisdom that James has to offer, in terms of that sort of tension between, God's mercy and love for us and the call for us to, live a life that includes works. So, the heading for mine on chapter 3 is Taming the Tongue.
Yeah.
Which,
Yes, there was a lot of that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, again, it sort of reverts back to what we talked about last week, is listening, right? If we stop to pause and listen before we speak, then, oftentimes, I think especially when we're at an emotional level, like anger, or, that's helpful
Well,
for
of course,
us.
the tongue is a creation. I don't like where it says, placed among our members as a world of iniquity. I mean,
Yeah, and I think if we look at the context of this particular, when this was written, again, there was always that challenge from folks about the validity of Jesus' humanness, and how that dissent and talk was detrimental to the early church, because it was that Jesus pretended to die and be resurrected. That Gnostic movement.
okay.
Yeah, and so, or the people that felt like Jesus was coming soon. Why isn't he back? He said he was coming again,
Mhm.
and so I think part of that, you have to look at that part of what was going on in terms of the talk too.
Of course, James was early. I mean, even Paul talks about it happening soon, but James was well before that.
Yeah, but, they think James was written in the 130s or
Mhm.
40s or 50s. Yeah.
So when was Paul? Later.
Earlier, Paul is earlier.
Earlier than
Yeah.
James? That's not what I saw on it.
Well, remember I said they think that James was written by someone later to pay homage to him? Yeah, so, there was that part of it too, so, yeah. And we can talk about that. I remember saying that, and I can go back, it was in our first, when we were talking about, James was martyred sometime before 66, but they think it was written in 130 to 140, you know, so, yeah. All right, question on that? It's good, hi! We wondered where you were, we're just getting ready, so.
There's one last push for getting the road done.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we were just talking about that too. Well, you were on page 16, and let's, pray that prayer together that starts with loving God. So here we go. Loving God, we easily overlook the goodness of your law and the gift of your wisdom. Help us to see how your law promotes and sustains life, and how wisdom shows your sustaining care for all of creation. Be with us as we study and learn from your word and from one another. Amen. So as we read 3 and 4 together, because that's what we're going to do, I wonder what I did with my pencil and pen.
Did they fall on the floor?
I might have. We'll see maybe how that sign that you're looking at, those 2 signs, have more meaning. But what do you see in that sign, or that image? Thank you.
You're saying it's 2 signs, it looks, I mean, it looks as though it can't go either way.
Oh, I do see it as 2 signs.
Okay,
You
well,
see it as one?
One is overlapping the other on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Looks like they're confusing.
I was just gonna say it's confusing, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But it also, I think, represents like what you say, it can either go this way or that way. You know,
Yeah.
you have to be careful. It can either lift somebody up or it can put somebody down, and
Yeah.
you have to be careful with your words.
Yeah, that sort of, there's a kind of a simultaneous thing going on, and again, it's that self-awareness and discernment to decide. I always have trouble when that says wrong way, and yet the roads look close together, and I have on more than one occasion on a certain area in Roseville where all that, like Total Wine over there on Fairview, all of that, very confusing by Portillo's now, back in there. I had my grandsons with me, and I just was merrily going down the wrong way till I saw a car coming at me and said, "Grandma!" Back up.
Put them in the median and you don't,
Mhm.
what do you mean wrong? I gotta go down one way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so, yeah, I
Yeah.
know what you mean, they do look confusing.
yeah. So, when I looked at this, I thought about that. Any other impressions about that?
Looks like, inner city. That's what it makes me think of, where somebody would take the sign and turn it around.
Oh,
To confuse everybody,
yeah.
to change the pole, so the street signs are going the wrong way.
No, they're different signs. I mean, they say one has the O of one way at the butt end, and the other has the O of one way at the pointed end. So it isn't, the one is turned, it must have been taken from somewhere else if it was like...
Yeah, it looks bent, doesn't it? To me, it looks bent right there above the bottom one, right?
Yeah.
On the, where it's being fastened, yeah.
Yeah, what would you do if you came upon that?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I'd look around to see which way people were going. I mean,
Yeah.
how else are you gonna know?
Yeah.
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 Well, let's look at our key verse, where it says, "The wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy." Yeah, it comes to us pure, and then who has the ability to tarnish it or, make it seem what it's not?
We
Yeah. So again, there is that discernment
Mhm.
on how we glean the written word and then apply it to our practical theology,
Right.
which is not always easy to do.
It says, wherever there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder. That may be, but it does seem that dictatorships tend to be fairly orderly.
Yeah. But if I look at a few examples of dictatorships around the world right now, I'm thinking of Hong Kong, you know, and I'm also thinking of, where was it? I just read there was a big, in Spain, there was a part of Spain where they're protesting because they want to break away from the government. And so I think there's always an undercurrent. Maybe that's a generalization, but
I hope so.
yeah. Yeah. Well, let's read 3 and 4, and we'll read 3, and then we'll talk about that, and the words, and how you feel, and what questions the text raises for you on page 17. So, who would like to read, is anybody up for reading all of chapter 3, or that first paragraph? We
Oh,
can
sure,
take it by
read it all if you want.
There you go.
Okay. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers and sisters, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness, for all of us make many mistakes. Anyone who makes no mistakes in teaching is perfect, able to keep the whole body in check with a bridle. If we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, or we guide their whole bodies, or look at ships, though they are so large that it takes strong winds to drive them, yet if they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. See also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great exploits. How great a forest is set up by a whole fire, and the tongue is a fire. The tongue is placed among our members as a world of iniquity. It stings the whole body, sets on fire the cycle of nature, and is itself set on fire by hell. For every species of beast, and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed, and has been tamed by the human species. But no one can tame the tongue, a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless the Lord and Father, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening, both fresh and brackish water? Can a fig tree, my brothers and sisters, yield olives, or a grapevine figs? No more can salt water yield fresh. Who is wise and understanding among you? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness, born of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and self-ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, devilish. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace for those who make peace.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
That's a lot to live up to.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, holy cow.
And I think he sets it all up for us in verse 2. For all of us make many mistakes.
And then he goes on to talk about people who make no mistake.
Yeah. Are those people around?
No.
No.
I don't know any.
Yeah. So what words, I mean, there's a lot of metaphor here and imagery. What words in this text stood out for you? Like in that first section that Peter read, what's the image James is trying to create there?
The little things, the little problem gets big.
Yes, right. And especially if the tongue's working on it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You know how
Untruth
Yeah.
gets bigger.
hmm or gossip, or,
Right.
you know, yeah, I was thinking of these horrible, forest fires when he uses that image.
Right,
Like
that's
just-
what I thought of too, it's California, just
Yeah,
a tiny spark of
Yes.
something and
just the,
devastates everything, you know, it's just.
yeah. What else in that, next section, the image, what words, or in any of those 3 paragraphs that Peter read?
The training of the sea creatures and that, and I think about, you know, the zoos where we've trained things, but we still have a lot of trouble over our own, tongues.
Yeah,
Restless evil and full of deadly poison.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or a bit in the mouth, you know, with a horse, that image, if you've ever ridden a horse, you know, how you get them to stop.
Yeah.
When it says from the same mouth come blessing and cursing, it's like being a saint and a sinner at the same time, right? It's,
Yeah, and that's where that sign
it's
came
where
in
we
there.
are.
Yeah, that tension between what path am I gonna take?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That blessing and cursing.
And we have a choice where these sea creatures or water or fire or doesn't have a choice. It does what it does.
Mhm. Oh, you mean that innate sense of,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and where a fig can't grow on a grapevine and things like, I mean, they
Mhm.
can't do that.
yeah. I also thought of taming animals. We can only do that so far. I mean, you always hear of lions,
Tigers.
you know, turning on their trainers, and
Mhm.
even
Sure.
the orcas and all of that.
Mhm.
And, you know, that you can only take that so far. So I thought of that also.
He may not, James may not have known a lot about training animals.
Yeah, well, yeah. So what about those 2 kinds of wisdom? In verses 13 through 18. What is James saying there?
Okay, that's James saying. That's the Jesus we're doing here. He does seem to see 2 conflicting kinds of wisdom.
Yes.
I don't, but, and the devilish one still is wisdom.
Yeah. So,
Well, there are smart people that are unkind, I mean, tacky, not truthful. I mean, it isn't only the gentle people that are wise.
oh, no, yeah. And, I think about Twitter and, you
Yeah,
know, the
right.
Facebook and, you know, that media that a lot of the, you know, how that can be spinned in a way that
Sure.
can be cruel with a message, but also some people might see as, because it agrees with what you're saying, you know, a good thing.
Mhm.
So, that certainly, can go one way or the other, you know.
Right.
Depending on how it's spun and how we perceive it. so,
Well, and how it's written.
right?
On Twitter, you can write anything you want. It does not have to be the truth.
Yeah, although it'll be interesting to see now, they've banned political ads, correct?
Mhm.
Because they felt like, some of it wasn't true. Facebook is really under a lot of pressure now
To do the same.
to do the same, so,
It'll be interesting to see what they do.
yeah.
I'm looking at Ecclesiastes, I mean, and the writer here doesn't see two kinds of wisdom. There's wisdom on the other hand, and madness and folly on the other. It's a different approach.
But in verse 15, he says, before that, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, devilish. So I think he's looking at the sources as well.
Or greed.
Yeah, and ends it with, the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy.
That would be true wisdom,
Yeah.
instead of
So-
man-made wisdom or something.
Pardon?
Instead of like man-made wisdom.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So, are there consequences to both of these kinds of wisdom?
I hope so.
Yeah, there are, right?
Definitely.
And even for that pure wisdom that comes from God, if we look at the life of Jesus and the life of the disciples, and even today, people who are martyred, the consequences sometimes can be evil for us. Not that drastic, but have you ever had relationships that have ended? Maybe not as we grow older, but maybe when we were younger and we drew a line in the sand or took a stand that, cost us relationships or friendships or, So,
Yeah. If you talk about politics to a lot of people, you can draw that line in the sand pretty quick.
oh yeah.
Same with religion. I mean, there are a lot of subjects when we get together, don't discuss.
Yeah.
Because of that. I mean, because we all have our own ideas and our own truths, and whether they're right or wrong, nobody's willing to budge, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if you love those people and value your relationships with
Right.
them, the cost becomes too much.
Right.
And because we live in such a polarized, environment right now, there's not a lot of middle ground to maneuver in because nobody's there.
Yep.
Or I shouldn't say nobody, but it's become more and more difficult.
It's hard to get there.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, it's hard to
common,
get there.
saying, bite your tongue.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because count the cost, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking from a pastor's point of view, you preach the gospel, but when people say, well, why don't you stand up for what you think or believe? Well, I look at pastoring as pastoring all the people out there. I'm not called to pick and choose who matters, or, everybody matters and their life matters, and so, yeah, if you value people and, yeah.
Okay, well, you're an interim, some non-interims, are willing to, sound forth their own interpretations of the gospel, which may not go over well with everybody.
Oh, it doesn't have anything to do with me being an interim. I preach the gospel. I don't think I've ever come down one way or another or not preached on social justice or, so I think it's important to consider everybody out there as all created in God's image and member of the body of Christ. And our first call is to build up the body. that doesn't mean I sell out social justice or,
Oh, no.
that.
Right.
And I also think that, churches that lean one way or another, people find those churches,
Yeah.
you know, or those churches find them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, but, yeah, so,
That's one of the things that Cross in the past hasn't done. They don't choose sides. They don't talk politics.
hmm,
You know, you pray for understanding of both sides and working together.
hmm,
But you don't tell anybody, do this or do that.
mhm,
That isn't who we are, you know. That isn't who we want to be.
hmm,
We don't want that from the pulpit,
hmm, yeah.
you know.
Well, I don't know, there are different points of view, for example, on the migrants from Mexico.
Sure.
And, I think it's okay and to take, and we have it in the prayers every Sunday, or most Sundays, and I think that's fine, because but
Oh,
it
I
is
do
taking
too.
a side in a way.
Oh, yeah, and prayer is a powerful, yeah, we do, where we see people suffering. Yeah, it's our call to lift that up, you know, whether you're liberal, conservative, whatever, you know. And I have said that on several occasions from the pulpit, that it doesn't matter who we are, you
Right.
know.
No, but that's not actually, that's not taking sides. That's praying for all people.
Oh, right, yeah, and
And you're not saying, don't pray for the Kurds, or just pray for the Syrians, or just pray for the Iranians. You know, we're including everyone in our prayers.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think you're both saying the same thing. We have to stand up for, and prayer is a way to do that.
Right.
I think if we look at that, but the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits. And so, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy, I think at the same time, you hear in prayers, we pray for all our leaders. Do I like them all? No. You know, we could have a whole conversation about that.
Well, yeah,
But,
Martin Luther risked his life, by opposing, certain, directions.
Yes, yeah, and thanks be to God for that. I
Mhm.
mean, because it made a huge difference. And, so I hope you don't hear any of us saying that we wouldn't support that. I mean, I think as Christians, we're called to lift up people that are persecuted and all of that. But if we look at Martin Luther King, peaceable, gentle, I mean, nonviolent, you know, while there was violence that was spurred from that, that was not his intention.
Okay, I was talking about Luther, not King.
Oh, I thought you said King.
No, Martin Luther.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
He risked his life for what then?
Well, he was, opposing certain directions of the church. He was particularly opposed to indulgences.
Oh.
And he could have gotten himself killed.
Oh, yeah, he was lucky that Frederick the Weis
Mhm.
kidnapped him and he ended up at Wartburg Castle.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess, do you see, we just talked about this, one way, you know, this, where is the middle ground in that? And what is our call as children of God to reconcile and to restore? Does James give us wiggle room in chapter 3?
Doesn't feel like it.
That devilish thing.
Yeah. So what I love about Lutheran theology is it calls us into the gray all the time to keep the conversation going. Again, I'll refer back, if you go to look at the ELCA social statement, there's a lot of thought and there's a lot of, you can tell they've done a lot of, research and gotten a lot of feedback and perspective But what you also find is ultimately it's our intellect and our faith and how those two are woven together, where we are called to discern and to make up our own minds, which is often harder, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Than for someone to say, no, you need to believe this or that. Fundamentalism in religion, that the boundaries are drawn, so we navigate knowing exactly, what we're called to do.
What church really is the conservative Christians? Is it the free or the evangelical?
Yeah, they could be more fundamental in their interpretation of Scripture. Baptist, Missouri Synod, Wisconsin Synod. I mean, each time you move to those synods, it becomes more fundamental interpretation of Scripture. Yeah, so.
Wisconsin Synod, women aren't allowed to vote.
They can't read Scripture.
They can't read Scripture, so there are no women lay ministers or,
I went to
pastors.
Wisconsin, so
Yeah.
I know all the, I was raised in the Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are social things too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not supposed to belong to clubs and scouts and anything where they pledge,
Allegiance
to
something
something
other than
else.
God.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have our, Jehovah's Witness, they're part of that, and, but I think, again, for those people, maybe that's the way, that's where they feel called to live out their life of faith, that's not for us to be, I don't hear anybody saying that, self-righteous or, judgmental, because then, well, we may not be saying it, if we're thinking about it, it's on the tip of our tongues, so to speak, so, using our own wisdom based on our own life experiences and our own practical faith or theology, where is the middle ground here? Yeah, and I'm not looking for a right or I'm just looking for your wisdom on that. And you can just think about that. You don't have to come up with an answer, but it is challenging, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the golden rule. I don't know.
We love our neighbors as ourselves. That's the golden rule to me. We treat others how we would love to be treated or like to be treated. And first of all, we love God, who emulates peaceable, gentle mercy.
Well, and it says, show by your good life, and what you do, that
You model.
you are trying anyway to be that better wisdom, the good wisdom.
And there's that practical theology, right? You're practicing it, you're living it out.
Yeah.
I like to say that's one thing I really love about Minnesota and Minnesotans, coming from Illinois. When people ask me about Minnesotans, I said I would use one word to describe them, it's practical. And because, and then if you think about religion and people's faith in Minnesota, that practical means you're practicing something. And I look about taxes and all of that are high in Minnesota, but you always have a surplus at the end of the year. And the way those taxes are dispersed, I really feel is for the greater good. I mean, a lot of people benefit from the programs and the things in general that Minnesota offer. In Illinois, where I come from, oh my gosh, I don't know how many governors are in prison, and it's just they're in financial trouble, and people are leaving the state in droves.
8 point something sales tax too.
Yeah, but I'm thinking here, done the bitter envy and selfish ambition, that lands us off, and so. I think practical is the more I think about it, a really good word, because it's where the rubber hits the road, so.
Which I think is, goes along with what I quoted from Ecclesiastes. I mean, Well, really, there is, I think, I agree with Ecclesiastes, there's only one kind of wisdom, and there's not two, as James would have it.
Yeah, so you understand why Luther would struggle with the book of James, and other people that contested it being in the canon. So let's read chapter 4, and then we'll look down at those biblical texts that they've given to promote and to sustain life. So, friendship with the world. Somebody want to read that first part?
I'll read the first part.
Okay, thanks.
Those conflicts and disputes among you, where do they come from? Do they not come from your cravings that are at war within you? You want something and do not have it, so you commit murder. And you covet something and cannot obtain it, so you engage in disputes and conflicts. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, in order to spend what you get on your pleasures. Adulterers, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. Or do you suppose that it is for nothing that the Scripture says, God yearns jealousy for the Spirit that He has made to dwell in us? But He gives all the more grace, therefore it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned into mourning and your joy into dejection. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will exalt you.
Okay.
Wow.
You're looking up for the day.
Wow.
Who would like to read 11 through 17?
Do not speak evil against one another, brothers and sisters. Whoever speaks evil against another or judges another speaks evil against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is one lawgiver and judge who is able to save and to destroy. So who then are you to judge your neighbor? Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a town and spend a year there doing business and making money. Yet you do not even know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead you ought to say, if the Lord wishes, we will live and do this or that. And it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Anyone then who knows the right thing to do and fails to do it commits sin.
Do you think it would be fair to give that title to James of Zealot? Yeah, one way and one way. I mean, the arrows pointing in both directions. And he uses that phrase again in verse 8. You double-minded. You know, that struggle inside of us that
Part I question is lament and mourn and weep and turn your joy into mourning, and is that really gonna do anything? I mean, who is that gonna help?
Yeah, I struggled with those words too.
Not that you should brag and,
Mm-hmm.
promote yourself, but this isn't gonna help either, I don't think.
Yeah, and joy is a thing that I think is more of sort of an inner countenance we have as opposed to happiness or,
Right.
So.
Humbling, yes, but the rest seems a little bit over the top.
Well, not only that, but you're worthless when you're doing those things. You're crying, you're not helping anyone, you're not visiting anyone, you're not sharing anything with someone, you're into yourself,
But, but Martin Luther did
The sackcloth and the penance
yes,
and all of that.
when he,
But what did he discover, though?
yeah,
That wasn't what it was all about, right? He had to
Right.
read Romans that said, you're saved by grace through faith.
right,
And, yeah, so you could see why he would struggle with it.
right,
But he was on the other side.
right.
Maybe when he read this, before his revelation, who knows?
While we're landing on James, I don't like the business about friendship with the world as enmity with God. It seems to me we want to be friends with the world.
Some of this is very hard to swallow.
But
Yeah.
maybe it means being involved just with the worldly things,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
not with God.
Yeah. Where is your, what's your motivation or your motive or your, those desires that he talked about, those devilish, But again, there is that tension, right? We are called to, as stewards to.
Devotion.
Yeah. So, or relationships, our faith is relational, so we live in a world that,
Well, maybe, like verse 7, maybe it's more, pointed to, like, the proud, or,
Mhm.
like to,
Mhm.
for people to turn away, repent, and
Mhm.
maybe you have to do that, do the, lose your joy or become humble and then
Sort
start
of
over
get down
again or
to all the
something.
layers peeled
Right.
away and then maybe deconstruct or reconstruct, or.
Because I'm thinking, because it says God opposes the proud, so
Mhm.
maybe
Yeah.
the boastful, haughty, I don't know.
Well, let's look, does somebody want to look up Deuteronomy 4, 1 through 14? And if you just give me a shout out, then somebody, and then we got Psalm 1.
I have Deuteronomy.
Okay, thank you.
160. I think she wants people to do different ones.
Or we, I'm looking at, we can, let's look at Deuteronomy 4, and then Luann will have you.
I noticed that there are 6 passages here, and there's 6 of us. Is that the?
Yeah, there you go.
No.
You just go down the line.
So what number now in Deuteronomy?
4.
Deuteronomy 4, 1 through 14.
You want me to
So,
read?
yeah.
So now, Israel, give heed to the statutes and ordinances that I am teaching you to observe, so that you may live to enter and occupy the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, is giving you. You must neither add anything to what I command you, nor take away anything from it, but keep the commandments of the Lord your God with which I am charging you. You have seen for yourselves what the Lord did with regard to the Baal of Peor, how the Lord your God destroyed from among you everyone who followed the Baal of Peor, while those of you who held fast to the Lord your God are all alive today. See, just as the Lord my God has charged me, I now teach you statutes and ordinances for you to observe in the land that you are about to enter and occupy. You must observe them diligently, for this will show your wisdom and discernment to the people, who, when they hear all these statutes, will say, Surely this great nation is a wise and discerning people. For what other great nation has a God so near to it as the Lord our God is whenever we call to him? And what other great nation has statutes and ordinances as just as this entire law that I am setting before you today? But take care and watch yourselves closely, so as neither to forget the things that your eyes have seen, nor to let them slip from your mind all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your children's children, how you once stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, when the Lord said to me, assemble the people for me, and I will let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me as long as they live on the earth, and may teach their children so. You approached and stood at the foot of the mountain, while the mountain was blazing up to the very heavens, shrouded in dark clouds. Then the Lord spoke to you out of the fire. You heard the sounds of words, but saw no form. There was only a voice. He declared to you his covenant, which he charged you to observe. That is the 10 Commandments, and he wrote them on 2 stone tablets. And the Lord charged me at that time to teach you statutes and ordinances for you to observe in the land that you are about to cross into and occupy.
Okay. So he's kind of summing up their journey, right? And all along saying to do what? He uses the word discern, right?
Mm-hmm.
And speaking to the wisdom. And not only for you, but also for your children. For your children. So, there's always been a call for us to discern and use our wisdom and to remember. But we just read, it was either last week or the week before, I lose track, where, the Jews said to Jesus, we've never been slaves to anyone. What are you talking about? And, their history is important, and Moses is saying, remember that, because it's important to share that. And are other impressions from that?
Of course, we do add something. I mean, the new covenant.
Yes, yeah. Does that change God's faithfulness?
Of course not.
No. No. It just takes some of the, I don't want to say responsibility off of us, but when we lose that animal sacrifice, who becomes the real sacrifice then? Jesus. And so that's been done for all time. But yeah, the old covenant gives way to the new, and the interpretation of the law in a different way because of Jesus. So, yeah, it's a good point. Okay, who wants to read? Let's quickly look at Psalm 1. It's a short one. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers, but their delight is in the law of the Lord. And on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all that they do, they prosper. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish.
Hey, you're doing NRSV, right?
Yeah. Do you have a different one?
No.
Yeah.
It's the standard cross-Lutheran Church Bible.
NRSV, yeah. So what do you hear in that? The very first psalm is, oh, here's my pen and pencil. It's setting up that, right, that choice, or those two paths that we can take you know, the image of the trees that are deeply rooted and, you know, draw from the water, as opposed to, you know, the chaff that has no rootedness or groundedness and simply blows away.
The wicked seem so strong sometimes.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Mhm.
From Genesis 1 and 2, right?
Mhm.
Or 2 is more, the story of Adam and Eve. Yeah. And then what do when they're discovered? They blame somebody, right? It's not me, it's someone else or something else, yeah. So, okay, so let's look at Proverbs 1 through 7. We're still in the, you know, looking at the Old Testament. Right at the very beginning,
What verse did you say now?
1 through 7, we'll just read that first part. Because we're getting close to our break here. Somebody want to, go ahead.
You want me to read?
Yeah, thanks.
The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. For learning about wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for gaining instruction in wise dealing, righteousness, justice, and equity, to teach shrewdness to the simple, knowledge and prudence to the young. Let the wise also hear and gain in learning, and the discerning acquire skill, to understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction.
Yeah, so we have that one way, both ways, right? Again, that path of, again, we see that word discernment. And also, Moses talks about carrying that on, you know, to the children. And here we see in verse 4 what? That we have to pass this along to the young is the word that's used. So there is that kind of responsibility on us to model or practice, you know, wisdom and discernment. So Matthew 7, we're going to move to the New Testament. Matthew 7:24 to 27.
Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on a rock. The rains fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on a rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rains fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall.
Okay. You've got the choice, right, of what to build your house on. And your Matthew is, you know, Matthew, a lot of what he is preaching on and teaching on is discipleship, and, you know, that notion of the communion of the disciples as well. So this is a pretty easy metaphor to understand, right? I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's, Romans 13, 8 through 10. The exhorter in exhortation, the giver in generosity, the leader in diligence, the compassionate in cheerfulness. Let love be genuine, hate what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality. I'm reading too far. aren't
Yeah,
I?
I don't have the
Strangers.
8 through 10.
8 through 10 in chapter 13.
Oh, sorry. Owe no one anything except to love one another, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word: love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. I'm sorry about that. We talked about that just a little bit ago. Love your neighbor as yourself. So, the guardrails of how to live our lives and the consequences as a result of that. Okay. Let's stop there, and we're going to look at the historical context of this all. So, how do you feel about wisdom in the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament? Has that opened any doors, or your way of thinking? I mean, when we think of the Bible, I'm speaking personally here, I always go to the life of Jesus, the Gospels, and then because I guess that's what I'm drawn to. So what word did the disciples use a lot when they addressed Jesus? Master, rabbi, teacher, so especially in Matthew with the Sermon on the Mount, with, the Beatitudes and that's wisdom there too, right? How to live a life of discipleship. So wisdom really cuts across all areas, and I thought those verses that we just read, did a good job of presenting that to us. Because I don't think we often think of the Bible as a wisdom book, do we? Is that one of the words that you would have used?
No.
To describe the Bible? I'm just throwing my own thoughts out.
The Bible's kind of a
The good
hodgepodge.
Yeah?
Lots of things, but not.
Right, well, it's the good news.
Good news, the gospel again, yeah. And we have good news in the Old Testament too. Yeah. Okay, I bet those brownies are thawed if people wanna try one. We'll spend a minute, and then we're gonna look at the literary, or, the historical context.
I'm going to try and cut through. Oh, yeah, there's one. We'll cut it and see if they're sticky. Nobody's going to get up.
Let you
Yeah. Holy cow. So
You're getting it.
they're like glue.
Are they still frozen?
No, they're just bluish.
A lot of frosting.
A lot of gluten.
Oh. Are you gluten-free person?
No, anything that sticks together like this, though, it's loaded. Okay, they're ready.
You have ginger snaps too.
Yeah. Okay, then line up.
Hey, I'll be first.
I'll get up.
There goes Carol, she's gonna
Carol's
beat you
going.
to it.
Yep.
Do we have anybody who has problems with gluten in the communion paper?
What, brownie, ginger tart?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Amy is.
Amy,
I can
yeah.
Is there any others?
Emily.
Well, she doesn't, I don't think they have any.
They
Oh,
don't,
you
and
can,
really.
there are such things. though.
Yes.
Oh,
there are.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Probably expensive, right? Although,
No, not really, and if you know, the thing to remember, especially when you're serving communion, is you don't pick it up, because then especially if you're serving the regular wafer, so you have to just offer the,
No, I don't care for that.
or they get it, pick it up
is there any
themselves,
copies?
Oh, yes, I'm sure. No, I thought it
You just don't put many out at a
Right.
time, but,
Never thought of that, but
yeah,
cross-contaminating.
yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to put them in a dish in front to let people that are gluten-free choose them themselves.
Yeah.
Because people that are really gluten-free are really.
Sensitive.
Is
Yeah.
the coffee in there, Luann?
Is there?
Yeah,
Yep,
Oh,
there is, it probably got cold though, but I
there's
think
a
I
little
saw
bit
some
more
more, I
left,
can go get it.
okay. And really, you only need one element to receive communion, you don't have to do both, so.
I'm having a very hard time reading today.
Are you?
I can't hardly find anything.
You
So
what?
it's like, I can't even find the pages for it.
Oh,
So
well,
it's like,
sometimes we have those days.
Can read the board just great.
Who wants coffee?
Hey. I'll have a look.
Where's Joanne today?
Oh, her husband was going to the Mayo today, so she thought she better go along.
Oh, well, I guess.
Yeah.
You're not drinking anything, Sylvia?
No. I take a little, please. Thank you. I love our gooey, thank you.
Are they?
Yeah, they're very gooey.
So does somebody wanna bring a treat next week, or I can certainly stop and get one, I think it's our last.
I can bring it. I'll stop at the bakery for it.
Oh, thank you.
The road will be good.
They're probably doing a happy dance at the bakery, cause they
Right.
said it's been hard on them.
I'm sure.
I just love that. Talk about go either way, we got the liquor store and the bakery.
Yeah.
In the same building. It's an odd combination, but maybe not, I don't know. Well, let's look at what it says under the historical context, because it says early Christians may have struggled to identify, how the wisdom of this world might be connected to their Christian witness. And so, and then we'll go on to talk about what Luther says about the two kingdoms that we live in, where we're constantly navigating which way to go. So what it asks us to do, in James says there is no conflict between the world's collective wisdom and God's grace.
That's not what James says.
Well, say more about that.
Well, I think it's already said it. He's talking about the wisdom of this world is devilish. And the wisdom that comes from God is pure and so forth. I do not see what's in this order guide corresponds to what's in the letter.
Well, there's no conflict between the world's collective wisdom and God's grace. So,
He's really down on the world.
James is?
Yeah, he says that if you're a friend of the world, you're an enemy of God, or something like that. I can't don't have my.
Enmity, he used the word enmity.
Yeah.
But, you know, election, if we call on God's grace, then isn't there a call for us to at least make an attempt to change the world in the sense of where it is today?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, what maybe he's referring to then about the collective wisdom is, you know, if we're drawing on the collective wisdom of God, then maybe we can make a difference or affect change.
Not arguing with that. I'm just saying that the learner guide here is in conflict with the letter.
Okay. Any other impressions about that? I mean, it's really no different for us today, in a sense, right? Sometimes to take a stand as a Christian.
Right.
I mean, look at all the people that don't go to church anymore. I mean, the unchurched are more common today than the people who go to church or follow, you know, people say they're spiritual but not religious. I'm thinking of is it your grandson? Those stones and, you know, that kind of icons they are for him to focus on, you know, that's more spiritual than, you know, what we think of today as, you know, the Ten Commandments, yes, or whatever, are more abstract. It's that kind of focus on that helps him to identify with how to live his life. So, yeah. But he can do that in his own room, you know, without, and I'm not judging at all. I mean, you say he goes to church and there's all of that. But life is different and our approach is different to how we live our lives as Christians, you know. So, yeah, how do we navigate that today?
Yes, I know
Different.
people in my family that don't go to church anymore, but they're very compassionate and very caring and loving and helpful and do what God would want you to do.
Yes.
Even though they don't go to the physical church.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
again, it's the Spirit's up to something. I'm convinced. You know, what's out there, you know, it's still a mission field and our call to love neighbor as ourselves, but how does that reveal itself in terms of dwindling attendance and, you know, we could all talk about people in our families that you just mentioned, you know.
yeah, we have this both ways.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
then, doesn't wisdom and discernment become even more important, I think, for us to navigate and not judge and to wonder and to worry, you know?
yeah,
No,
maybe there's something in God's plan for that. I don't know.
Oh, we have to trust in that, right?
Yeah.
My sister had twins, and she named them David and Andrew. And I wrote to her and saying, Prue, these are biblical names. Are you, I haven't thought of you as being religiously oriented. And she said, oh yes, I haven't told you. I'm strong in the Presbyterian Church.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, so while the early Christians were struggling, you know, how to balance, you know, this way of living that James calls us to, and really God calls us to, and maybe, you know, how do we put a foot in both worlds? And that's why I want to move to Martin Luther. And that portion of, because I really appreciate this about Martin Luther, his two kingdoms that he identifies with. So I'm going to let's look at number 2 under Lutheran context. Luther talked about the place of wisdom, law, and command in his teaching on 2 kingdoms. We live in these 2 kingdoms at the same time, In one kingdom, Luther said, God works through the gospel of forgiveness and promise to make sure that we understand that we are justified not by what we do, but through God's mercy and grace in the death and resurrection of Jesus. Luther called this the kingdom on the right. In the kingdom on the left, the kingdom of this world, or the world of creation, God works through laws or commands to preserve and sustain life. God gives the resources of wisdom so that we can sort out or discern the best ways to preserve and care for the lives of our neighbors. This kingdom encompasses all the world's institutions and structures, rules and regulations. Here, human insights and wisdom can develop and imagine better ways of living. Notice that God is at work in both kingdoms in different ways. What are some other similarities or differences between the two kingdoms? So we have the civil kingdom and the spiritual kingdom. I mean, in terms of, you know, their derivation, I guess, I would say. So, yeah, again, we're back to navigating those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we build bridges from one kingdom to the next? Or, yeah, I think we have to.
Or we intermingle.
Or straddle, yeah, intermingle, yeah. Does this make sense to you? You know, the secular versus the non-secular, and, you know, church and state, and all of those ethics and all of that.
If you look at the whole thing, it isn't like, as Christians, we're supposed to just do, I mean, Christians work in the real world. They're not separate. And so you bring your Christianity with you wherever you go.
You do. That cross on your forehead, and if I think about even people that seem to be extremely removed from society or the civil world, like Carmelite nuns or, you know, monks that have taken a vow of poverty, they're pretty removed from the civil world, so to speak. But most of them have what? Ministries that sustain them in the outer world, like the Dubuque, what is the, Abbey, what's the name of the first Abbey? Anyway, they're Carmelite monks who build caskets, you know, New Mellery, the Abbey there.
Yeah.
Or they make wine, or they, you know, so even being cloistered in a sense, you know, you have to survive too.
You still have to live in the real world.
Right, yeah, in a sense, so yeah, so. But again, there's a tension there, right, between the two worlds that we navigate?
We have laws and rules in our world and in God's world. So, you know, you have to obey the laws in this world too.
Yeah, yes, they apply to us too. So I'm thinking even of, you know, when these certain political parties or power come into play, how one of the main motivations is to fill the courts with conservatives or liberals to carry out the law that our religion or our ethics, you know, that we believe in, you know. So, yeah, it can be used in ways that really don't speak to the greater good, but for our own point of view or preference. So, again, then I think we're back to, you know, the wickedness of what is perceived to be wisdom at times, you know, self-serving or self-righteous. Does anybody feel conflicted or kind of heavy when you read James? Because it's glaring, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
For
a
me.
lot of rules.
A little bit fiery.
fire and brimstone.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
It's
that's
heavy.
when I read through it and I thought, you know, gospel's gotta come in here someplace.
Do you see any gospel in there?
Well, it's really hard to.
Yeah.
Well, and now I've tried to find this verse, this one that said that God's wisdom is gentle and
With the
all
peace?
those,
Yes.
I can't find it, but you know what was left out was grace.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things Luther struggled with, was there's not enough gospel in there of Jesus and that revelation of God's grace in Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like, that one was left out, and forgiveness was left out.
Well, in 4:6, he gives grace and said, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So grace
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
mentioned in there.
Okay.
Does James ever either mention Jesus or even allude to him? I don't think I've seen that.
No, again, that was Luther's, you know, and, oh, now that thought just flew out of my head. Oh, salvation is not mentioned, you know, either.
And I know each statement in the Bible is meant for us to look at and to learn from, but who was he talking to? I mean, was there a group of people that were, I mean, we're all bad, but I mean, was there this?
And I think the Christians then, you know, who is our allegiance to? You know, the Roman law or the government, or, you know, how do we navigate as Christians in a world that functions under that kind of law? And a lot of them, let's be honest, were being killed and persecuted.
True.
And so, you know, yeah, what was his motivation? You know, that remember who you are?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you know, when we read the Old Testament, you kind of expect this. When you get into the New Testament, it's like, okay, hasn't there been a crossover here?
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking of Paul's letter to Corinthians, because, I mean, there was a lot of misbehavior going on in that church as Jesus didn't come back, and, you know, the sexual improprieties and the bickering and the, you know, the sort of fudging of the Gospels and Jesus' teaching. So, you know, James wasn't the only one who chided or exhorted, but his is very extreme and...
Right, and his seemed to be for everybody. I mean, you know, when Paul was talking to the Corinthians.
Right.
And I mean, there was.
The Ephesians or the Thessalonians, yeah.
They were specific, and
Yeah.
you could still relate to it, but, yeah, this one just blew me away. I thought, wow, I haven't
Yeah.
heard a fire and brimstone sermon for a long time.
And at the beginning, it does say that James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Mm.
So, to the 12 tribes in dispersion, so that's what's right at the beginning. So,
And that it was written later that, you know, maybe they were drifting away and becoming more of the world, and so this person lifts up James, you know, and that fiery life that he lived to honor him and maybe to turn people's heads. I mean, yeah. But yeah,
There is a saying, you live in the world, but don't be a part of the world.
not of
That's-
the, yeah.
yep, there's always a conflict, I think. We always have a conflict.
Oh, yeah.
Which way to go, which way is the right way.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not clear.
Yeah, again, then we're back to discernment and wisdom, right? You know, it's, yeah. But I agree, there's a heaviness to this that, kind of takes all the fun out of living. So if you had to choose between Jonah and James. And, you know, let's go back to Luther's description of James, an epistle letter of straw. You know, I mean, think about straw or chaff. You know, we heard that word chaff in what we read earlier. I mean, is that a fair assumption, or do you see where Luther was coming from? That might be a good thing for us to think about and sit with. I mean, who in your life, I thought about this as I was reading this, who in your life do you think about, and we talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago, I mean, when you think of wisdom and discernment, those people in, you know, our lives who are almost like balm for us, that just to sit with them and listen to them and remember them is almost healing for us. You know, how, I don't know, for me, I guess rare that is, you know, to have people like that. Yeah. I mean, think about those folks in your life. Think about people who are wise. I mean, what characteristics do those people have that you remember or strive for?
Which is what this is all. Watch your tongue,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm thinking of they're humble. The ones that I'm thinking of were humble people, you know.
Tolerant.
Yeah. Kind of quiet, unassuming in a way that, I don't know, I'm thinking of my grandmother and my mom and, you know, in
You
particular.
just have a presence about them that is just soothing and comforting and,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
and you just wonder,
Yeah.
how do you get like that? But,
Yeah. Well, let's look at, I think there's a closing prayer for us, the devotional context. I'm on page 19. So we're justified not by what we do, but through God's mercy and grace in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. I think you just read that, didn't you?
mm-hmm.
What do you think about this statement? Tell or write about something in this session of the Bible text that challenges you or delights you. Well, I think we've talked a lot about the challenges of, you know, but it might be good for us this week to think about something in this, maybe even go home and reread chapters 3 and 4 and look for something that delights you in what we've read. Pray that prayer together. God of all creation, you sustain and care for the world through wisdom and the law. Help us to appreciate these gifts and see you at work in the world. Empower us with your wisdom to care for the world we live in. Amen. So that's a challenge for us too. If you read a lot of news or you watch a lot of news, you know, or people that you have conversations with in the coming week, where do you see wisdom? You know, where do you see wisdom or discernment? And what does that do for you? In
I
terms,
just think of how hard it must have been for the Jewish to, when Christ came and they were so concentrated on the law, of keeping the law, and then all of a sudden, here comes this man that says, you know, you can't possibly fulfill that law.
Yeah.
And so now there's a new law,
Yeah.
or there's a new,
And then couple that with Gentiles
Yeah.
that were being called to follow this
Right.
Jew.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it had to be
yeah.
terrible conflict.
Mhm.
And I think still is.
Huh?
Yes.
I think still is.
Oh,
For
yeah,
the
sure,
regular
sure,
ones,
yeah.
because
And what we're
Yeah.
still doing to one another in the name of the law,
Right.
you know,
Right,
and, yeah.
Yep.
It's,
because they're still waiting, aren't they?
yes,
yes.
yeah, Jesus is a prophet,
Mhm.
but that's why during certain times of the years and festivals, they only cheer for waiting for Elijah, because Elijah will, remember we talked about that in Bible study as the precursor to Jesus coming, or the Messiah coming again for them.
Mhm.
So,
Elijah has to show up first,
yeah, yeah, so,
otherwise they probably wouldn't believe. I
Wonder
mean,
where that
you
came
know,
from, the notion that Elijah had to come first. I don't,
well, you know, I'm thinking of the Transfiguration, but that's New Testament for
Mhm.
us, you know, that's Jesus. But Elijah, a major prophet, but I don't really know, I can't say offhand, but,
Jesus says Elijah has come, we didn't recognize him.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because, we talked about that too. Where are those prophets or people of great wisdom? You know, again, I don't know. We named a few, but I think wisdom and discernment are ways of seeing glimpses of hope. Any thoughts? The sun is shining.
I'm biting my tongue.
Yeah. Well, we'll figure it all out this final Tuesday that's coming up, but I've sure been appreciative of all our conversations and your willingness to study the Word. It's a good